Hey everybody, and welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into web analytics today.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, we've got some really interesting source material this time around. Um, a bunch of lecture slides and notes,
Yeah.
and they go all the way back to the, early days of the internet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we'll be looking at how it evolved and how that's led us to, the modern world of web analytics. But
Okay.
yeah, I think the slides might seem kind of dense at first glance, but
Oh,
we'll unpack it together
awesome.
and hopefully extract some, really cool insights for everyone.
Great.
So
Yeah.
one of the first things that jumped out at me was the definition of web analytics.
Okay.
It says here on the slides that it's the process of collecting, analyzing, and reporting data related to web traffic and user interactions.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's really interesting is that analyzing part.
Right.
It's not just about gathering data, it's about making sense of it all, right?
Absolutely. That's really the key.
Yeah.
Web analytics is all about understanding how people use websites and what makes them tick.
Hmm.
And then we use that knowledge to, make sites better, easier to navigate, more engaging, stuff like that.
So it's not just about how many people visit a site, but what they actually do while they're there.
Exactly. You got
Okay.
it. It's all about the actions they take.
Gotcha. The slides also mention these things called web metrics.
Right.
Are those like the clues we use to figure out what's going on?
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
Web metrics are measurable values
Mhm.
that help us quantify user behavior. Think of them as like signposts
Okay.
that tell us, how many people visited a page or how long they stayed or whether they clicked on a particular link.
Got it.
The slides break them down into three main categories:
Okay.
acquisition,
Mm-hmm.
engagement or experience,
Okay.
and conversion.
So acquisition sounds like it's all about how people find a website in the first place.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Acquisition metrics basically tell us where our traffic is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So things like search engines, social media, direct links, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
This can be super valuable for figuring out which marketing channels are working best.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So if you're running ads on Facebook and Google, you can see which one is sending you more visitors.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay, cool. And then engagement.
Yes,
That's about how much people are interacting with the website once they get there, right?
exactly.
What kind of metrics fall under that?
Well, think things like time spent on a page,
Okay.
bounce rate pages per visit.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, are people just glancing at the page and leaving, or are they sticking around to, read, watch videos, click through to other pages?
I see. I've definitely heard of bounce rate before.
Yeah.
Isn't that like a bad thing?
Well, not necessarily.
Oh.
It really depends on the website's goals.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
for example, let's say you have a blog post. You probably want people to stick around and read the whole thing, right?
Right.
But if you have a landing page with a single call to action, a high bounce rate might actually be a good thing.
Oh, okay.
It could mean people are finding what they need and moving on quickly.
So it's all about context.
Exactly.
Okay. And then what about conversion? What does that tell us?
Conversion is all about whether users are completing those desired actions on your site.
Hmm.
Things like buying a product, signing up for a newsletter, downloading a white paper.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, it's measuring how effective your website is at achieving its goals.
Gotcha. One of the slides, Mitronefsio mentions checkout page exit rate as a really important conversion metric, especially for e-commerce sites.
Right.
So is that telling us how many people are abandoning their shopping carts at the last minute?
Yep, that's exactly it.
And why is that so important?
Well, think about it from a business perspective.
Yeah.
If people are adding items to their cart, but then leaving before they buy anything, there's a problem somewhere.
Right.
It could be a confusing checkout flow, unexpected shipping costs, or even just a lack of trust in the payment system.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, by identifying a high exit rate on that checkout page, businesses can investigate what's causing that friction
Right.
and then make changes to improve the user experience and hopefully increase sales.
So it's like using web analytics to find those hidden pain points that are driving customers away.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. It can really make a big difference.
And the interesting thing is that this whole process, like identifying metrics, collecting data, analyzing it, and making changes,
Okay.
it's not a one-time thing.
Right. It's a continuous cycle.
Okay, the slides actually use the word iterative. What does that mean exactly?
It basically means that you're constantly using the insights from your web analytics
Yeah.
to make those ongoing improvements to your website.
Okay.
You analyze the data, you make changes based on what you learn, and then you collect more data to see if those changes actually had the desired effect.
Got it.
So it's like a never-ending cycle of learning and optimization.
I see. I'm starting to understand how web analytics can really turn data into act.
Yeah, definitely.
But where does all this data come from in the first place? Like, how do websites actually get their hands on it?
That's a great question and something we can dive into next.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So we've been talking about all this data that websites are collecting, about their visitors.
Right.
But how do they actually get their hands on that data? What are the methods they use?
Well, there are a couple of main ways that websites gather this data.
Okay.
One is web server logging,
Okay.
and the other is page tags.
Web server logging.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of ominous. Like, is it Big Brother watching my every move online?
Not quite.
Okay.
Web server logging is simply a way for websites to keep a record of all the requests that they get.
Okay.
So every time you visit a web page,
Mm-hmm.
your browser sends a request to the server hosting that page,
Right.
and the server logs that request.
Got you.
So it's really just a detailed record of all the activity that's happening on the website.
So it's more like a history book than Big Brother, I guess?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could think of it that way.
But what kind of information is actually being logged?
Well, it depends on the server and how it's configured. But generally, the logs include things like the date and time of the request,
Okay.
the user's IP address,
Mm-hmm.
the page that they requested, the browser they're using, and their referring URL.
Okay. Referring URL, what's
The-
that?
The referring URL is basically the web address of the page that the user was on before they clicked on a link to your site.
Okay.
So it can tell you a lot about how people are finding your website.
So if I'm on Google and I click on a search result,
Mm-hmm.
my referring URL would be the Google search page.
Exactly. That's right.
Okay.
And by analyzing all this log data, website owners can get really valuable insights into user behavior.
Mm-hmm.
That they can see which pages are the most popular, where people are coming from, what kind of content is really resonating with their audience.
That makes sense. But isn't that a lot of information to go through? I mean, like finding a needle in a haystack?
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
But that's why we have tools and techniques for analyzing those server logs and really extracting those meaningful patterns. The slides mentioned some semi-standardized log formats like NCSA and W3C and ISIS.
Okay.
These basically make it easier to process and analyze all that data.
So it's not just a random jumble of, numbers and letters.
Right.
There's a structure to it that makes it actually usable.
Exactly.
That's good to know. So we talked about web server logging as a way to collect data, but you also mentioned page tags.
Right.
What are those?
Page tags are small snippets of code that are embedded within web pages.
Okay.
They're typically written in JavaScript.
Okay.
And they allow websites to collect even more detailed information about user interactions.
I see.
So unlike server logs, which are capturing requests made to the server,
Mm-hmm.
page tags can capture actions that are happening within the user's browser.
Okay, so server logs are like the website's diary. Page tags are like hidden cameras.
Haha, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that page tags are generally used to collect anonymous data
Okay.
about user behavior. It's not to personally identify or track individuals.
Gotcha. So what kind of things can page tags track that server logs can't?
Well, things like mouse movements, scrolling behavior,
Right.
form submissions, and even video views. Page tags can also track how long a user spends on a particular page, or even a section of a page,
Right.
which can give website owners really valuable insights into what content is engaging people the most.
So it's a lot more detail.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah, it sounds like it sounds like page tags can really paint a much richer picture of how people are actually using the website.
They really can. And actually, the slides give a really cool example of how page tags work behind the scenes using something called AJAX.
AJAX. Oh, I've heard of that.
Have you?
Yeah, I've heard the term, but I don't really know what it means.
Oh, well, AJAX stands for Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. And it's basically a way for web pages to communicate with the server in the background without having to reload the entire page.
That sounds kind of complicated.
It can be. But the basic idea is that a page tag can use AJAX to send data back to the server as the user is interacting with the page
Okay.
without interrupting their experience.
So, for example, if I'm scrolling through a really long article, a page tag could be sending data back to the server about how far I've scrolled
Exactly.
and how long I've spent on each section.
That's right. And that data can then be used to, improve the article's layout, add more engaging content, or even personalize the user experience.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that's really useful for website owners.
Yeah, it is.
But doesn't it also raise some privacy concerns? I mean, it sounds like these page tags could collect a lot of personal information about me.
Yeah, that's a valid concern, and it's
Yeah.
something that website owners need to be very transparent about.
Right.
Most reputable websites will have a privacy policy that explains what data they're collecting, how they're using it, and how users can opt out of that tracking if they want to.
I know, I've seen those long privacy policies. But I usually just click agree without reading them. Is that bad?
Well, it's always a good idea to be informed about how your data is being used.
Yeah.
But the reality is that most people don't have the time or really the technical expertise to understand all the nuances of data collection and those privacy policies.
Right.
So that's why it's really important for websites to be upfront about their practices and to give users clear choices about how their data is being used.
So it sounds like there's this delicate balance
Yeah.
between, using data to improve the user experience.
Right.
And also respecting people's privacy.
Exactly.
The slides also talk about the stateless nature of the web. What does that mean?
It's a really fundamental concept that helps explain why cookies are so important for web analytics. Essentially, the web is stateless because each request that's made to a server is treated as a brand new independent interaction.
Okay.
The server doesn't remember who you are or what you did on previous visits to the website.
So it's like every time I visit a website,
Yeah.
it's like meeting a stranger for the first time,
Hmm.
even if I've been there 100 times before.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So how do websites overcome this statelessness problem?
Well, that's where cookies come in.
Yeah.
Cookies are these small text files that websites store on a user's computer,
Okay.
and they act like digital breadcrumbs,
Huh.
allowing the server to recognize returning visitors and to remember some information about them.
So it's like giving the web a memory.
Yeah. Do you think of it that way?
Like we're helping it remember who we are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cookies are essential for things like keeping you logged into a website,
Right.
remembering the items in your shopping cart, and personalizing content based on your past behavior.
Oh, so cookies are how websites tailor like content to my interests?
Yeah, that's right.
I always wondered how they did that.
By tracking your browsing history and preferences, cookies allow websites to show you content that's more likely to be relevant and engaging to you.
Okay.
It's how they create those personalized recommendations you see on e-commerce sites or social media platforms.
That makes sense. But earlier we were talking about, privacy concerns with page tags.
Right.
Do cookies raise similar issues?
They can. While cookies themselves are just text files, the information that they contain can be used to track your browsing activity across multiple websites.
Okay.
And this is how advertising networks build profiles of your interests and then target you with ads based on your browsing history.
So those ads that seem to follow me everywhere online, those are powered by cookies.
Exactly. And it's one of the reasons why cookies have become such a hot topic in, the privacy debate.
Right.
Some people find it creepy that their online behavior is being tracked,
Right.
while others appreciate the convenience and personalization that cookies enable.
I can see both sides for sure. So it sounds like there are both benefits and drawbacks to cookies.
Definitely.
Is there a way to balance the two?
Well, there are definitely things that website owners can do to be more transparent and to give users more control over their data.
Okay.
For example, they can provide really clear and concise privacy policies.
Okay.
They can offer users the ability to opt out of tracking, and they can use cookies responsibly by only collecting the data that's really necessary for their stated purpose.
That makes sense. So it really comes down to transparency.
Yeah.
Websites need to be upfront about what data they're collecting
Right.
and how they're using it so that users can make informed choices.
Exactly. Transparency is key.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of web analytics.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much about how websites work
Yeah.
and how they're tracking our behavior. It's definitely given me a lot to think about.
I'm glad to hear that. And I think the slides make a really great point. In their quiz section, by highlighting the importance of balancing personalization and privacy, it's a really complex issue that's going to continue to evolve as technology advances.
You're right. It's not a simple black and white issue.
No.
There are trade-offs to consider.
Yeah.
And it's important to have these open conversations about how we want the internet to evolve.
Absolutely.
The more informed we are as both website owners and users,
Yeah.
the better equipped we'll be to shape the future of the web in a way that really benefits everyone.
I agree.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
And to all you listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.